In this video, I'm going to explain through scientific studies why low-carb diets cause insulin resistance. So my name's Adam Bono. I'm an online fat loss professional, and I specialize in hormonal priming, body recomposition, and actual metabolism manipulation called metabolic priming. I've worked with hundreds of men around the world, getting them to elite level physiques, and none of these men have used low-carb diets. So you do not need a low-carb diet, but I'm actually going to shine the light on low-carb diets, where they get their popularity, and why insulin resistance is caused by low-carb diets in healthy individuals. So let's kind of get right into the video, and I'm going to be kind of pulling up actual case studies online that they have done on this specific subject. So like low carbohydrate intake correlates with trends of insulin resistance and metabolic acidosis in healthy lean individuals. And so we're going to be going through case studies, but I also want to kind of give it a high level view, what carbohydrates do, insulin resistance in general, and why the things that you hear on the internet aren't true, right? So at the end of the day, when calories are equated, it does not matter, right? When protein and calories are equated, it does not matter. So low carb diets get their popularity because, one, people just cut all the carbs out. They cut all the carbohydrates that they think is bad for them out, and it creates a calorie deficit. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. The problem in today's society is that low-carb diets without the proper protein intake cause muscular decline. And that's why a lot of people who go on these low-carb diets without a proper protein goal or proper calories in general lose a lot of muscle tissue, and they get caught in that what's called skinny phase, where they can't really get that last little bit of belly fat off of them no matter how low they get their calories. So let's take into context why doctors, for instance, recommend cutting out white rice and white bread out of somebody's diet. Because, one, it helps them get into a calorie deficit easier. So even when you pull this up, importance of the glycemic index for weight loss, studies suggest that consuming foods with a low GI may promote satiety and reduce calorie intake. So note, reduce calorie intake. So it helps them just reduce calorie intake. So imagine telling an individual who's overweight to go track food, track protein, track carbs, track fat. What they tell them to do is just put parameters around them to help them lose more weight. And so when you lose more weight, blood sugar improves, insulin sensitivity improves, and all other health markers improve by simply losing more weight. But you have to understand that insulin sensitivity isn't bad. Insulin is a hormone that you need in your body. And the fact is that insulin resistance in men, in a lot of cases who are trying to get to a next level physique, they don't understand that once you take carbohydrates out of your diet and then you add carbohydrates back, that's when the insulin resistance does occur. For instance, we have a client who's came to us before. He was eating 1,400 calories, no carbohydrates for almost a year, and was stuck in the skinny fat phase, could not get that last little bit of belly fat off of him. We started to give him a little bit more carbohydrates, and all of a sudden his blood sugar started to spike and he started to become insulin resistant. So what we had to do was actually slowly reintroduce carbohydrates back into his diet so his body will actually accept it. In a lot of cases, the reason why insulin resistance in trends of healthy individuals are caused is because you start to lower those carbohydrates, your metabolism starts to lower with it, and then you become more insulin resistant because you're cutting carbohydrates out of your diet. And that leads to the pattern that we see in today's society of getting relatively lean, but not to that next level physique, and then just gaining it back every winter just to do it all over again every summer. So what people need to understand is how much carbohydrates to eat, how much protein to eat, how much fats to eat, so you can get that next level physique. Because when you dial in the macronutrients, that gives you the cosmetic appearance of what you're looking for with the shredded six-pack abs without having to starve yourself. In this study, overall the findings of the study showed for the first time low carbohydrate intake in healthy individuals of a normal weight might lead to dysfunctional glucose homeostasis, increased metabolic acidosis, and the possibility of trigger inflammation by C-peptide elevation in plasma. So this is what happens when people go into keto or carnivore, for instance, and they gain the weight back, is because they become insulin resistant, and then when they start to add carbohydrates back into their diet, their body's not used to it. So obviously, yes, it's going to put it off as body fat. So moving on to carbohydrates and the purpose of carbohydrates in general, you have to understand what's called the glycemic index, which, like I mentioned, was the rate of absorption of a certain carbohydrates. So when carbohydrates are equated, it does not matter. The carbohydrates that you get from processed sugars and the carbohydrates you get from wheat bread and the carbohydrates carbohydrates you get from rice, when all equated, are exactly the same. So like from an insulin resistance standpoint, an insulin spike standpoint, higher glycemic carbohydrates, yes, they will slightly raise your insulin very acutely right after you eat a high glycemic carbohydrate. Very acutely though. But where it does come into context and when it does matter is the type of carbohydrates and how it leads to overall digestion. So another negative effect on digestion is the body's metabolism. This is causing reduced efficiency in digestion and greater fat storage, which is more often than not accumulated around the belly. So I've done videos before explaining the importance of your digestion within your diet to optimize fat loss, because digestion is the first process, energy absorption, that your body actually goes through. So like, let's take the glycemic index, and where people don't really understand from a full point what the glycemic index is. So the glycemic index, obviously, yes, is the rate of absorption of carbohydrates, but what matters in the entirety of the food that you eat is the glycemic index of the actual food. So white rice, for instance, has a high glycemic index. But if you pair white rice with a beef that has fat in it, which slows down the digestion, it becomes a moderate glycemic food. Or for instance, if you were to eat like white bread and put peanut butter on it, that peanut butter would slow the digestion of that high glycemic food. So fat loss and insulin is closely related, yes, but insulin is good. You need insulin in the body. You need insulin because if you become insulin resistant, your body's not processing glucose correctly. So insulin is a storage hormone. When protein and calories are controlled, there is no significant difference to fat loss. Acute spike in insulin with higher glycemic foods than lower glycemic foods, yes, but a low-fat diet will drive less fat into adipose tissue consequently. So let's kind of go into exactly what insulin is and the overall importance of insulin in your body. So insulin is crucial because it acts as a key to allow glucose from the blood to enter your body's cells, providing them with energy. So carbohydrates, for instance, are your body's main fuel source, its main energy source. And so without carbohydrates, obviously, at some point, yes, you start to produce ketones, but where most people go wrong is they put themselves in a metabolically unhealthy condition where they're not producing ketones, they're not eating enough carbohydrates, and they're kind of stuck in metabolic purgatory. So without enough insulin, glucose builds up in the bloodstream, leading to high blood sugar levels and potentially serious health complications like diabetes. So diabetes and blood sugar, for instance, can be improved just by overall weight loss. When calories are equated, just overall weight loss matters. But when you're going from trying to get to a next level physique, get six-pack abs, you need carbohydrates in your diet. Because the difference between somebody who's obese and somebody who's in good shape is that somebody who's in good shape needs carbohydrates for actual performance. So key points about insulin. Insulin is a hormone produced by the pancreas to help regulate blood sugar levels. So insulin's good. It helps regulate a lot of these things, and it helps regulate blood sugar levels from the movement of glucose through the bloodstream. And so people who go into low-carb diets become insulin resistant, and your blood sugar levels aren't being regulated properly. So even moving on, we talk about like where body fat actually gets stored, right? Where does body fat actually get stored? So you don't need insulin to put fat into adipose tissue. You don't. You put fat into adipose tissue by over-consuming on calories. And you put yourself in a kind of corner with a low-carb diet because you're insulin resistant. So like you can gain fat either way. When calories are equated, it doesn't really matter. What matters more importantly is for healthy, lean individuals that carbohydrates are important in the diet. So let's break down low-carb diet versus high-fat diet. So the difference between the two is very, very simple. So they've done an actual study called de novo lipogenesis in humans, right? Which they found that carbohydrates actually accrue less body fat, but they burn less body fat subsequently. So like even right here, high-fat diets store more fat and they burn more fat. Obviously, if you're consuming more fat, your body's going to subjectively burn more fat. But carbohydrates store less fat. And so if you get into a hard carbohydrate diet with a moderated fat goal and obviously a structured protein goal, you can structure the body to where it's not storing fat, but you're getting enough energy to burn fat subsequently. And so in this study in de novo lipogenesis, they found that very low amounts of carbohydrates actually get stored as body fat. What happens in today's society is that people overeat on food overeat on carbohydrates, overeat on fat, those carbohydrates pad the calories, and the fat intake, the macromolecule of fat, actually gets stored as fat. And so yes, high fat diets burn more fat, but they store more fat. So you're better off having a moderated diet with good carbohydrates and a moderated protein and fat goal, so your body can utilize that energy correctly, and so you can actually go utilize more, maybe cardio or your training to actually burn more calories. But on the opposite of things, when you're eating carbohydrates, your non-energy activity thermogenesis is always also up, which means that you're just more active psychologically. And so the overall aspect of what I'm trying to teach in this video is that, like I mentioned, none of my clients who have gotten insanely lean do low carb diets. We do a moderate to high carb diet with a fat goal that we stay under and a high protein goal. And that's how you get to the next level physique and how you operationalize how the body utilizes carbohydrates, utilizes insulin, because you would rather be somebody who is more versatile in their foods rather than being somebody who is scared of carbohydrates or can't eat carbohydrates. You want to become more insulin sensitive so you have the ability to have good balance, so that you have the ability to eat what you want and not be scared of carbohydrates. You're better off with a more moderate carb, low fat diet, and so you can operationalize insulin sensitivity and your body can work better. You have more energy, you have a leaner look, you have more glucose. So yes, if you eat too much carbohydrates, eventually you will gain fat. I'm not saying that, but when calories are equated, carbohydrates store less fat than fat. So I want you to try this. I want you to take your diet of your high fat, maybe moderate protein, and I want you to switch some things around. Start with a protein goal of 1 gram per body weight, a fat goal of 0.3 times your body weight, and then I want you to add some good healthy carbs into your diet. I promise you, within the first week, you're going to feel better, you're going to look better, you're going to think better, and you're also going to have more energy. So try it out. Let me know how it goes, but make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel because I'm doing all new videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday, teaching you guys more about how to get to a next level physique. And I'm going to be showing you step by step along the way how we do it with our clients. So make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and turn the bell notification on for the video on Wednesday, and I'll see you guys soon.